Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm your host, Brian Scott. Today I wanted to talk about astral influences. This discussion will be somewhat similar to the discussion we had about unseen forces when we read Manly P. Hall's incredible work, Unseen Forces. And I found a chapter in the great book by L.W. de Lawrence on astral influences, which expands our understanding of some of the entities and spirits that exist within the astral realm. I think this stuff is important. You may wake up and find yourself in the new earth someday with all this knowledge, and having an awareness and knowledge of the astral entities that exist will give you an advantage in understanding what you may perceive to be horrifying and fearful. So this may add to our knowledge of it. This book talks about things like magic and sorcery, and this particular chapter I found to be very powerful. Astral influences, pneumatology. The orthodoxy of the Middle Ages looked upon angels and devils and departed human spirits as being personal entities. They personified the powers of good and evil and made them caricatures and monsters that flitted from place to place, attempting to subjugate the souls of men to bring them within their power. The governmental institutions during those times were those of oligarchy, and the poor were dependent upon the favors of the rich. The power of the church was supreme, and the dictates of the clergy suffered no disobedience. Servility and the craving of personal favors were the order of the day, and this state of mind necessarily influenced and modified the religious conceptions of the people. The supreme spirit of the universe became degraded in their eyes to a personal tyrant, into whose favor they attempted to wheedle themselves by penitences, supplications, and by means of the intercessions of priests who were supposed to be his favorites. Everything that could not be reconciled with existing prejudices and opinions were attributed to the devil, and the horrors of the Inquisitions, religious persecutions, and witch trials are too well known to be required to be recalled to the memory of the reader. The pneuma, or soul. The pneuma, or soul, means a semi-material spirit, an essence or form which is neither material in the common acceptance of that term, nor pure spirit. It is like everything else in the universe, a form of will, and may be with or without any intelligence. Usually it means the connecting link between spirit and body, but there are beings who belong entirely to the realm of the soul and have no such bodies as are commonly called material. It may be said that the soul is a certain state of activity of the will, and the same may be said of the physical body, for if we look at the universe as being manifestation of will in motion, then all forms and objects that we know of or of which we can imagine are certain vibrations of will. Thus, we may look upon physical nature as being constituted of a low order of vibrations, upon the soul as a high octave of the same, and the spirit as being one higher still. If the physical body dies, the lower octave ceases to sound, but the higher one continues, and will continue to vibrate as long as it is in contact with the highest. But if the spirit has become separated from it, it will sooner or later cease its activity. Thus, if to form the substance of the body of the paradisical man, the man of the new Olymp, Devachan, and the lower essences of the soul, from which the spirit has departed, dissolve in the astral elements to which they belong, as the earthly dissolves the elements of the earth. This dissolution, however, does not take place immediately at the time of the separation of the soul from the body, but may require a long time. That which constituted the mind of a man, the astro, still continues to exist after the death of the body, although the astrum is not the person to which the astrum belonged. If a person has been true during his life, his spirit will be true after his death. If he has been a great astronomer, a magician, or alchemist, his spirit will still be the same, and we may learn a great many things from such spirits, they being the remnants of the mind which once constituted the terrestrial man. There are two deaths, or two separations. the separation of the spirit and the soul from the body, and the separation of the spirit from the soul, or to express it more correctly, of the spirit from the merely intellectual and animal soul. If a person dies a natural death, i.e. from old age, his passions have died out during his life, his selfish will having become weak, and his mind like that of a child putting its confidence in its father. His spirit and soul will at the time of his death become free from material bonds and be attracted into a higher zone in spirit life. This kind of a soul does not enter into communication with mortals because it has no desire for anything earthly. It does not think or speculate about terrestrial things or worry itself about its relatives or friends. It lives in a state of pure feeling, bliss, and enjoyment. Such is the fate of those who die a natural death without development. But the condition of those who die prematurely without being regenerated, either by their own hands or in consequence of some accident, differ greatly. Because although their souls have become forcibly separated from their bodies, the spirit does not therefore necessarily leave the soul, but may remain with it until another separation takes place. They remain in such cases human beings like the others, only with this difference, that they do not possess a physical body, and they remain in such a state until the time arrives when, according to the law of nature and their own predestination or karma, their physical death should have taken place. At that time, the separation of their higher and lower principles takes place. Up to that time, they possess their astral bodies. Such bodies are invisible to those not developed, but they are visible to them and have sensation and perceptive faculties, and they perform in their thoughts that which they have been in the habit of performing during life and believe they are performing it physically. They still remain in the earth sphere and are called Kabbalah, lemurs, etc. They are still in full possession of their earthly desires and passions. They attempt to satisfy them and are instinctively attracted to persons in whom they find corresponding desires and passions, and to such places where they hope to satisfy them by entering into sympathy with such persons or mediums. They are therefore often inclined to instigate such mediumistic persons to the commission of crimes and immoralities. Neither can they avoid doing so, because by losing their physical bodies they have also lost the necessary amount of energy and willpower to exercise self-control and to employ their reasoning faculties. They often haunt the places where they used to spend their time during life, thus attempting to find relief from their burning thirst after the gratification of their desires. Wherever their thoughts attract them, they will go. If they have committed some crime, they may be bound by repentance to the place where it was perpetrated. If they have a treasure buried, care for their money may hold them there. Hatred or desire for revenge may tie them to their enemies. Love may turn them into vampires and connect them with the object of their passion, provided that there are some elements in the latter which will attract them, because the astral body of an evil person cannot influence the mind of a pure person, neither during life nor after death, unless they are mutually connected by some similarity in mental organization. Under certain circumstances, such human entities may become visible or manifest their presence in some manner. They may appear in bodily shape or remain invisible and produce sounds and noises such as knocks, laughing, whistling, sneezing, howling, groaning, sighing, walking, trampling, throwing stones, and moving articles of furniture or other objects. And all this may be done by them for the purpose of calling the attention of the living, so that they may obtain an opportunity to enter into communication with them. But not the appearance of supramundane or submundane visitors are caused by apparitions of the ghosts or astral bodies of suicides or victims of accidents, nor by the astral corpses and the ephestra of the dead. But there are other invisible entities that may haunt the houses of mortals and may become occasionally visible and tangible to the physical senses if the conditions necessary for such a purpose exist. One of these cases is made up of the being called phantasmata. These ghost-like spirits are nocturnal spirits having reasoning capacities similar to those of men. They seek to attach themselves to men, especially to such as have little power of self-control, and over whom they may gain power. There are a great many kinds of such spirits, good as well as evil, and they love to be near man. In this they are comparable to dogs, who are also fond of the company of men, but man can profit nothing from their company. They are empty shadows and are only an encumbrance to him. They are afraid of red corals, as dogs are afraid of whip, but the brown corals attract them. The author recommends the wearing of red corals as a remedy against melancholy and witchcraft. They are ruled by the influence of the sun, with those of brown color are under the influence of the moon. The red ones are disagreeable not only to the phantasmata, but also to the monster, incubi, succubi, and other evil spirits, but their brown corals are agreeable and attract them. I know of some cases of obsession, melancholy, depression of mind, hypochondria that have been successfully treated by the wearing of red corals, while other articles employed for the same purpose had no effect, and the cure could therefore not be attributed merely to the belief of the patient. Some people believe that such spirits can be driven away with holy water and the burning of incense, but a genuine holy water cannot be had so long as no man is found holy enough to be able to sooner attract evil spirits than drive them away, because all evil spirits are attracted by things that are attractive to the senses, and if we wish to drive them away, it would be more reasonable to employ disagreeable odors for such a purpose. The true and effective power against all evil spirits is the burning of temple incense and the exercise of a strong will. If we love all the source of all good with all our heart, mind, and desire, we may be sure never to fall into the power of evil. But priestly ceremony, the sprinkling of water, and the singing of incantations are the inventions of clerical vanity, and they therefore take their origin from the source of all evil. Ceremonies were instituted originally to give us an external form to an internal act, but where the internal power to perform such acts does not exist, a ceremony will be of no avail, except to attract such spirits as may love to mock at our foolishness. Another class consists of the incubi and succubi, of which rabbinical traditions speak in an allegorical manner, as having been created by the spilling of the seed of Adam, the animal man, while engaged with Lilith, his first wife, meaning a morbid imagination. Imagination is the cause of the incubi and succubi and fluidic larvae. The incubi are male and the succubi are female beings. They are the outgrowths of a lewd and intense imagination of men or women, and after they take form, they are carried away. They are formed of the sperma found in the imagination of those who commit the unnatural sin of Onan in thought and desire. Coming as it does from the imagination alone, it is no true sperma, but only a corrupted salt essence. Only a seed that enters the organs which nature provided for its development can grow into a body. If a seed is not planted in the proper soil, it will rot. If sperma does not come into the proper matrix, it will not produce anything good but something useless. Therefore, the incubi and succubi grown out of corrupted seed without the natural order of things are evil and useless. And that Thomas of Aquinas has made an error by mistaking such a useless thing for a perfect thing. The sperma coming from the imagination is born in amore eros. This means a kind of love in which a man may imagine a woman or a woman to a man to perform the connubial act with the image created in the sphere of his mind. From this act results an expulsion of useless ethereal fluid, impotent to generate a child, but capable of bringing larvae into existence. Such an imagination is the mother of luxurious unchastity, which, if continued, may render man impotent and women sterile, because much of the true creative informative power is lost by the frequent exercise of such morbid imagination. This is frequently the cause of moles, aberrations, miscarriages, and malformations. Such corrupted sperma may be taken away by spirits that wander about at night, and who may carry it to a place where they may hatch it out. There are spirits that may perform an octus with it, as may also be done by witches, and in consequence of that octus make curious monsters of horrible shape come into existence. If such monsters are born from a powerful conscious imagination, the same consciousness will also be created in them. The spirits of night may use all that is born from such sperma according to their pleasure. They can use nothing of human character or possessing true spirit. Amos erkos is a state of the invisible body and is caused by an overheated imagination stimulated to such an extent to eject sperma out of which incubi and succubi may grow. In ordinary pollutionibus nocturnalis, the body loses without any effort of the imagination, and the spirits of night cannot therefore use it for their purposes. If women who have passed beyond the age of fertility and are unchaste and of a vivid imagination, they may also call such things into existence. If persons of either sex have lewd desires and an active imagination, or if they are passionate in love with another person of the opposite sex and unable to obtain the object of their desire and fancy, then an incubus and succubus may take the place of the absent object, and in this way sorcerers may call succubi and witches into existence. To prevent such unfortunate occurrences, it is necessary to be chaste, honest, and pure in thought and desire, and whoever is unable to remain so should not remain single. Imagination is a great power, and if the world knew what strange things might be produced by the power of imagination, the public authorities would cause all the idle persons to go to work and to employ their time in some useful manner, and they would take care of all those who are unable to control their own imagination in order that such evil results should be avoided. The so-called dragon is an invisible being, which may become visible and appear in human form and cohabit with witches. This is accomplished by means of the sperma, which is lost by onanists, fornicators, and prostitutes, and which such spirits use a corpus to create for themselves a human form, because the whole of the human form is typified. And if such spirits use the sperma of a certain person, it is as one man puts on the coat of another, and then they have the form of a person and resemble him in all his parts and details. Another hideous monster is the basilisk, created by Aspis and Leo. There are innumerable bastard forms, half men, half spiders or toads, inhabiting the astral plane. If such forms are sufficiently dense to become visible, they appear like a colored shadow or mist. They have no life of their own, but they borrow it from the person who called them into existence, just as the shadow is cast by a body, and there is no body, there can be no shadow. They are often generated by idiots, immoral, depraved, or diseased persons who lead irregular and solitary lives and who are addicted to bad habits. The coherence of the particles composing the bodies of such beings is not very strong, and they are afraid of draughts of air, light, fire, and sticks and weapons. They are a sort of airy appendix to the body of their parents, and there is sometimes such an intimate connection between them and the body of their progenitors that if an injury is inflicted upon the former, it may be transmitted to the latter. They are parasites drawing vitality out of the person to whom they are attracted, and they may exhaust the vitality of the latter very soon if such persons are not very strong. Some such beings influence men according to their qualities. They watch them increase and deepen their faults, find excuses for their mistakes, cause them to wish for the success of evil actions, and gradually absorb their vitality. They fortify and support the imagination in the operations of sorcery. They sometimes utter false prophecies and give out misleading oracles. If a man has a strong and evil imagination and wishes to injure another, such evil spirits are always ready to lend a helping hand for the accomplishment of his purpose. Such things may render their victims insane, obsession, if the latter are too weak to resist their influence. A healthy and pure person can be obsessed by them, because such larvae can act upon men if the latter make room for them in their minds. A healthy mind is a castle that cannot be invaded without the will of the master, but if they are allowed to enter, they excite the passions of men and women. They create cravings in them. They produce bad thoughts which act injuriously upon the brain. They sharpen the animal intellect and suffocate the moral sense. Evil spirits obsess only those human beings in whom the animal nature is preponderating. Minds that are illuminated by the spirits of truth cannot be possessed. Only those who are habitually guided by their own lower impulses may become subject to their influence. Exorcism and ceremonies are useless in such cases. A strong will and abstinence from all evil thoughts that may stimulate the imagination or excite the brain are the only true remedies. Some believe in having a priest pray over them, but this is useless. The cure of obsession is a purely psychical and moral act. The obsessed person should use faith in self and abstinence, and after that a strong-willed person should will such spirits to depart. The reason why those who have never developed the inner sight cannot see such astral entities is because they are transparent as air. You cannot see the air unless you produce a smoke in it, and even in that case you do not see the air itself, but the smoke that is carried by the air. When we may feel the air when it moves, and we may also occasionally feel the presence of such entities, if they are dense enough to be felt. Moreover, the purpose of our physical senses is to perceive the objects that exist on the plane for which these senses are adapted, and therefore the physical senses exist for the purpose of seeing physical things, and the senses of inner man are made to see things from the spiritual plane. When the outer senses are inactive, the inner senses or spiritual sight may awaken to life, and we may see the objects on the astral plane as we see things in a dream. There are also some poisons by which the organic activity of the body may be suppressed for a time, and the consciousness of the inner man may be rendered more active, and which may therefore enable us to see that things on the astral plane. But such poisons are destructive of reason and very injurious to the health. In fevers, deliriums, such things may also be seen. Some of them may be the creation of the mind of the patient, others may have been created by the morbid imagination of another person. But if such entities are invisible under normal conditions to a human being, they may be well enough perceived by human elementary consciously existing on their plane. And what is still more, depraved humans' characters may take themselves the forms of animals and monsters to which they were brought to resemble by their evil thoughts. Form is nothing but an appearance representing a character, and the character shapes the form. If the character of a person is thoroughly evil, it will cause the astral form to assume a hideous form. Therefore, the souls of the depraved may appear in animal shapes. Your spirit has no form. It is formless like the sunshine, but as the sunshine causes the elements of matter to grow into plants, likewise the soul substances may be formed into beings having shapes through the action of the spiritual rays. There are good spirits and spirits of evil, planetary spirits and purified spirits. There are the spirits of the four elements, and there are many thousand different kinds. There's a never-ending chain of births and transformations taking place in the world of causes and spirits, as in the world of effects and forms. The lives of some such entities extend over enormous periods of time. Others have only a short individual existence. According to Brahmanical teachings, there are 7 main classes of spirits, some of them having innumerable subdivisions. First, Arupa, formless spirits. Planetary spirits, the intelligent 6th principle of the planet whose product they are. Second, Rupa Devas, having forms, high planetary spirits. Dhyan Cholas. Third, Pisakas and Mohinis, male and female elementaries consisting of the astral forms of the dead. They may be obsessed by elementals and cause incubi and succubi. Fourth, Mara Rupas, forms of desire or passion, souls doomed to destruction. Fifth, Asuras, elementals, gnomes, sylphs, undines, salamanders, etc. They will develop into human beings in the next Manvantara, or cycle of evolution. Sixth, beasts, elementals having animal forms or monstrosities. Seventh, Rakshasas, or demons, souls of sorcerers and of men with great intelligence but with evil tendencies, criminals for the advancement of science, dogmatists, sophists, vivisectionists, furnish material for the development of such devils. The Asuras are often called Devas and are worshipped in many places in India. They are the guardian spirits of certain places, gardens, houses, and have temples of their own. There are many thousand varieties. Each child receives at the time of its birth a familiar spirit or genius, and such spirits sometimes instruct their pupils even while the latter are in their earliest youth. They often teach them to do very extraordinary things. There's an incalculable number of these geniuses in the universe, and we may learn through them all the mysteries of the chaos in consequence of their connection with the mysterious Magnum. Such familiar spirits are called Phlegae. There are several kinds of Phlegae, and there are two ways by which we may obtain knowledge through them. One way is by their becoming visible and able to walk with us, and the other is by their invisible influence upon your mind. The art of necromancy enables us to perceive interior things, and there's no mystery concerning any human being that may not be found by the art, and that Phlegae may be made to reveal it either by persuasion or by the strength of one's will. For the Phlegae obey the will of man for the same reason as a soldier obeys the will of the commander, or an inferior obeys that of his superior, although the latter may be physically stronger than the former. The Phlegae can be made to appear visibly in a magic mirror or crystal, and not only the Phlegae themselves, but the person to whom they belong may be seen and all their secrets known, and if it is not practicable to cause them to become visible, such secrets may be found out by communication of thought, or by signs, allegorical vision, etc. By the assistance of these Phlegae, hidden treasures may be found, and closed letters may be read, and everything may be seen no matter how much it may be hidden from sight, for the opening of the interior sight removes the veil of matter. Things have been buried may thus be found, stolen goods may be recovered. The Phlegae may reveal their secrets to us in dreams, the good as well as the evil. He who obtains knowledge obtains it from the spirits. He who knows the elementals knows himself. He who understands the nature of the elementals understands how the microcosm is constructed. Phlegae are the spirits that instructed mankind in arts and sciences in ancient times, and without them, there would be no science or philosophy in the world. In the practice of divination by the Sortilegium, the Phlegae guide the hand. Such arts are neither from God nor from the devil as many believe, but they are from the Phlegae. The ceremonies that are customarily used on such occasions are mere superstitions and have been invented to give such occasions an air of solemnity. Those who do practice that art are often themselves ignorant of the laws that control it, and they may attribute the results obtained to the ceremonies and mistake their tomfooleries for the essential thing. In regard to the reliance that can be put into the revelations of invisible beings, entities, elementaries, the writer would say that evil spirits love to lead men into error, and therefore their prophecies are usually unreliable, and their predictions based upon trickery. Many spirits are mute, so that they may not tell everything so plainly to man that the latter does not need to use his reason to avoid making mistakes. The spirits do not always instruct man, and they do not always obey his command. Therefore, they are often silent when their talk is most needed, and they frequently speak false when it is of utmost importance to know the truth. This is the reason that so many things that have been told by spirits have been proved lies and illusions, and some spirits lie a great deal more than others. But it may happen that perhaps out of a dozen predictions made by such spirits, one accidentally comes out true, and ignorant people will in such cases pay no attention to the fact that 11 predictions were false, but they will be ready to believe everything that such spirits may say. Such spirits often teach those persons who deal with them to perform certain ceremonies, to speak certain words and names in which there is no meaning, and they do all such things for their own amusement and to have some sport at the expense of the credulous persons. They are seldom what they pretend to be. They accept names, and one will use the name of another, or they may assume the mask and the ways of acting another. If the occult student has such a spirit belonging to a better class, he may make a good medium, but one who has a lying spirit will hear nothing but lies, and on the whole many evil spirits surpass each other in deception and lies. Man is an instrument through which all the three worlds, the spiritual, the astral, and elementary world, are acting. In him are beings from all these worlds, reasonable and unreasonable, intelligent and unintelligent creatures. A man without any self-knowledge and self-control is made to act according to the will of these creatures, but the true philosopher acts according to his own will. If the masters to which man obeys are foolish, their servants will also act foolishly. It is true that everyone thinks that he is the master and that he does what he pleases, but he does not see the fool within him who is his master, in whom he becomes a fool himself. There is another class of spirits, the Saphame of the elemental spirits of nature. The elementals are not spirits because they have flesh, blood, and bones. They live and propagate offspring. They eat and talk, act and sleep, and consequently they cannot be properly called spirits. They are beings, occupying a place between men and spirits, resembling men and women in their organization and form, and resembling spirits in the rapidity of their locomotion. They are intermediary beings, or composita, formed out of two parts joined to one. Just as two colors mixed together appears one color, resembling neither one the other of the two original ones. The elementals have no higher principles. They are therefore immortal, and when they die, they perish like animals. Neither water nor fire can injure them, and they cannot be locked up in our material prisons. They are, however, subject to diseases. Their costumes, actions, forms, ways of speaking are not very unlike those of human beings, but there are a great many varieties. They have only animal intellects and are incapable of spiritual development. These spirits of nature are not animals. They have a reason and language like man. They have minds, but no spiritual soul. They may appear strange and incredible, but the possibilities of nature are not limited by man's knowledge of them, and the wisdom of the Creator is unfathomable. They have children, and these children are like themselves. They are liable to sickness, and they die like animals. Their habits resemble those of men. They work and sleep. They eat and drink and make their clothing, and are nearest to man. They live in the four elements: the nymphae in the elements of water, the sylphs in the element of air, the pygmics in the earth, and the salamanders in fire. They are also called Indinae, Sylvestres, the Nomi, or the Vulcani. Each species moves only in the element to which it belongs, and neither of them can go out of its appropriate element, which is to them as the air is to us, or the water to the fishes, and none of them can live in the element belonging to another class. To each elemental being, the element in which it lives is transparent and respirable as the atmosphere is to ourselves. The four classes of nature spirits do not mix with each other. The gnomes have no intercourse with the undines or salamanders, nor the sylvesters with either of these. As a fish lives in the water, its being is element, so each being lives in its own element. For instance, the element wherein man breathes and lives is the air, but to the undines the water is what air is to us. And if we are surprised that they are in the water, they may also be surprised because we are in the air. Thus the elements of the gnomes is the earth, and they pass through rocks and walls and stones like a spirit, for such things are to them no great obstacles than the air is to us. In the same sense, the fire is the air in which salamanders live, but the sylvesters are the nearest related to us, for they live in the air like ourselves. They would be drowned if they were underwater, and they would be suffocated in the earth and be burned in the fire, for each being belongs to its own chaos and dies if transported into another one. If that chaos is gross, the beings living in it are subtle, and if the chaos is subtle, the beings are gross. Therefore we have gross bodies so that we can pass through the air without being blown down, and the gnomes have subtle forms so as to be able to pass through the rocks. Men have their leaders and authorities. Bees and ants have their queens. Sheep and other animals have their leader also, and we also have the spirits of nature, their kings and queens. The animals receive their clothing from nature, but the spirits of nature prepare it themselves. The omnipotence of the Creator is not limited to his taking care only of man, but is abundantly able to take care also of spirits of nature, and many of the other things of which men know nothing. They see the sun and the sky the same as we, because each element is transparent to those who live therein. Thus the sun shines through the rocks for the gnomes, and the water does not hinder the undines from seeing the sun and the stars. They have their summers and winters, and their earth bears them fruit, for each being lives on the element whereof it has grown. As far as the personalities of the elementals are concerned, it may be said that those belonging to the elements of water resemble human beings of either sex. Those of the air are greater and stronger. The salamanders are long, clean, and dry. The pygmies are the length of about 2 spans, but they may extend or elongate their forms until they appear like giants. The elementals of air and water, the sylphs and nymphs, are kindly disposed toward man. The salamanders cannot associate with him on the account of the fiery nature of the element wherein they live, and the pygmies are usually of a malicious nature. The latter are building houses, vaults, and strange-looking edifices of some certain semi-material substances unknown to us. They have some kind of alabaster, marble, cement, etc., but these substances are as different from ours as the web of a spider is different from our linen. Nymphs have their residences and palaces in the elements of water. Sylphs and salamanders have no fixed dwellings. On the whole, the elementals have an aversion against self-conceited and opinionated persons such as dogmatists, scientists, drunkards, and the gluttons, and against vulgar and quarrelsome people of all kinds. But they love natural men who are simple-hearted and childlike, innocent and sincere. And the less there is of vanity and hypocrisy in a man, the easier will it be for him to approach them, but otherwise they are as shy as wild animals. Man lives in the exterior elements, and the elementals live in the interior elements. They have dwellings and clothing, manners and costumes, languages and governments of their own, in the same sense as the bees have the queens and herds of the animals their leaders. They are sometimes seen in various shapes. Salamanders have been seen in the shape of fiery balls or tongues of fire running over the fields or appearing in houses. Nymphs have been known to adopt the human shape, clothing, and manner, and to enter into union with man. There are certain localities where large numbers of elementals live together, and it has occurred that a man has been admitted into their communities and lived with them for a while, and that they have become visible and tangible to him. The spirits are invisible to many, but nevertheless a spirit may appear to our physical sight, and likewise man is invisible to the spirits of nature, and what the Undines know of us is to them merely what fairy tales are to us. The Undines appear to man, but not man to them. Man is gross in the body and subtle in the chaos, therefore they may enter his chaos astral form and appear to him and remain with him, marry and bear children with him. Thus an Undine may marry a man and keep house with him, and her children will be human beings and not Undines, because they receive a human soul from the man, and moreover the Undine herself thereby receives the germ of immortality. Man is bound to nature by means of his spiritual soul, and if an Undine becomes united to man, she will thereby become bound to nature. As an Undine without her union with man dies like an animal, likewise man is like an animal if he severs his union with nature. Therefore the nymphs are anxious to become united with man. They seek to become immortal through him. They have a mind and intellect like man, but not the immortal soul such as we have obtained through the development. But the spirits of the earth, the air, and fire seldom marry a human being. They may, however, become attached to him and enter his service. It must not be supposed that they are airy nothings or merely ghosts or appearances. They are of flesh and blood, only subtler than man, i.e., of the substance of the mind. The nymphs sometimes come out of the water and may be seen sitting on the shore near their dwelling, and they as well as the gnomes have a language like man, but the spirits of the woods are more rough and speak nothing, although they are able to speak and are clever. The nymphs appear in human form and clothing, but the spirits of fire are of a fiery shape. They are usually not to be found in the company of men, but they come to cohabit with old women, such as are witches, and they are sometimes obsessed by the evil spirits. All this is in the divine order of things and will become manifest in due time, so that we will then be able to see that which now seems almost incredible. In the legends of the saints, the elemental spirits of nature are often alluded to as devils, a name which they do not deserve, because they are as good as well as bad elementals. But although they may be very selfish, they have not developed any love for absolute evil, because they have only mortal minds but no spiritual essence to make them immoral. Besides the astral spirits in man and the elemental spirits of nature, there are many other spirits born within the soul, the will, and imagination of nature. And as the mind of man may create monsters, and man may paint their image on canvas or sculpture them in stone or wood, likewise the universal power of will creates monsters in the astral light. and they may throw their shadows forth in the physical world of appearances by becoming objective, incorporeal bodies upon the earth. Some of them are short-lived, and others will live until the day of the dissolution of all things. We all know that a man may change his character in the course of his life so that he may ultimately become a very different person from what he was before, and thus every creature having a will can change and become supernatural or unnatural, different from that which normally belongs to its nature. Many of the headlights of the church who now strut about with jewels and diamonds will be unhappy evil spirits when the human body in whom they are now masquerading will have disappeared at the time of their deaths. There are the sirens, but they are merely a kind of monstrous fish. There are also two more kinds of spirits related to the nymphs and the pygmies, namely the gigantes or giants and the dwarfs. This may not be believed, but it ought to be remembered that the beginning of divine knowledge is the light of nature illumines man, and that in this light he knows all things in nature by means of the light of the inner man. The giants and dwarfs are monsters being related to the sylvestres, and gnomes in the same sense as the sirens are related to the undines. They have no spiritual souls and may sooner be compared to monkeys than to human beings. Such spirits are often the guardians of hidden treasures. Such things may be denied by the worldly wise, but at their death all things will be revealed. Then will also come forward to the so-called doctors and professors who were great in their ignorance. Then will it be seen which ones were those who were learned in the foundation of nature and merely learned in empty talk. Then we will know those who have written according to the truth, and those who taught according to their own fancy, and each one will receive what he deserves. There will then be no doctors and no magistrates, and those who are now making a great deal of noise will then be very silent. But those who have received the true understanding will be happy. Therefore, I recommend my writings to be judged at that time when all things will become manifest and when each one will see the influence of evil and they work out their destiny. But the vulgar have a too high estimate of their powers, especially the power of the devil. The devil has not enough power to mend broken old pots, much less to enrich a man. He or it is the poorest thing that can be thought of, and poorer than any being that can be found in the four elements. There are a great many inventions, sciences, and arts that are ascribed to the agency of the personal devil, but before the world grows much older, it will be found that the devil has nothing to do with such things, and the devil is nothing and knows nothing, and that such things are the result of natural causes. True science can accomplish a great deal. The eternal wisdom of the existence of all things is without a time, without a beginning, and without an end. Things that are considered now to be impossible will be accomplished. That which is unexpected will in the future prove to be true, and that which is looked upon as superstition in one country will be the basis of the approved science of the next. You don't have to have all this memorized, and it may not be accurate or important or necessarily true. But I do find truth in writings like this, and I do believe that we're entering into another density where it's possible the veil may be lifted, and I continually am guided to produce material like this because it may give you some understanding or knowing if you're thrown into a situation where you're suddenly given your spiritual sight. I get people that contact me that start to actually travel or have dreams and visions, and they become very scared because they don't understand what they're seeing. This may not be related to that, but there is a whole world out there related to the elements, related to the astral, to your thoughts. They use the word sperma, but it's just the use of energy, the construction of thought being created in the world. And so they're using that as sort of a wording to help you to understand what's really happening. A seed is being planted when you're thinking. And so there's a world that we enter into. It may be one of the worlds we enter into after death or in significant experiences while astrally traveling. And it may frighten us at first because we don't know what we're seeing. We've watched enough horror films and we see something and we see ghosts floating around. If you check out the Unseen Forces episode. We know that a lot of what we see in the astral is just muck. It's not even conscious. You might see bodies floating along like in the river because oftentimes people will discard one of their bodies as they move from death to another level. And so these bodies are floating around and you're freaking out and you're scared, and then the fear starts to attract things, and the astral is probably more magnified when you start to attract things to this. So the bottom idea is to understand that it's just like anything in nature. They all have their own classification, they have their own intentions, and are made up of societies and colonies, and there's a whole world that's teeming out there, and it's super fascinating. There's worlds within the water, there's worlds within the earth, there's worlds beyond worlds, beyond worlds. So these older writings, which this really coming from Theosophy, are just trying to outline an earlier rudimentary understanding of this with people that have witnessed these divisions based on occult knowledge and teachings through long periods of time. And when they share these things, I find them super interesting. Have you witnessed any elementals or ghosts, anything in the astral? Please tell me all about it. I want to know, because I believe that if we are prepared for this, when we enter into the devaconic world, we can see these things. As Quo says in The Law of One Material, when the fourth density becomes apparent, we are opened to all this other world that we don't see. We don't see the gnomes walking through the rocks or the sylphs. We don't see those things. And so we don't understand that when we see a flame that it may be alive. So it gives you a rudimentary idea of the divisions of that kingdom. So when you see these things, oh yeah, I remember. These are just the astral. I'm witnessing these different elements within the astral realm or within nature or whatever it is. But the best way for us to understand it is to share our experiences. So let me know if you've experienced any of these things, if you've seen these things, because number one, that's a sign the new earth is here, that your spiritual sight has been awakened. And so tell me about it. There's so much fascinating information. It's really about the same as talking about what you see in nature. If I was to go into the rainforest, I'd find all kinds of different insects and creatures that would be way different than the ones that are here in California, or if I were to travel to Colorado. So I believe that the astral is teeming in life in the same way, and that an understanding of this going into it will allow us to think properly when the events do arise where we're found in the fourth density and the new earth starts to exist. For some people, this will be scary. For others, it'll be like, oh, this is some of what we're expected to be seeing as we move into the new earth. In any case, you can find all episodes of The Reality Revolution at therealityrevolution.com. And welcome to The Reality Revolution.